All right, welcome to TIL Talks with Chris White, where we talk TILs, tumor-infiltrating lymphocytes, and all advanced cell and gene therapies, both with patients and caregivers, along with industry leaders. Let's get going. As a reminder, I am not a medical professional or medical expert. I am only a professional and expert on my story and my experience. If you are needing or seeking medical advice or assistance, please reach out to your care team. All right, what's up? What's up? Welcome back to another episode of TIL Talks with Chris White. Today, I have another very special guest with me. This is Tracy Ryan with Encore, and she has a very unique and specific story that I am super excited to help explain and share. I've talked a lot about TILs, CAR T, CRISPR, but never before had anybody that has come on here to talk about NK cells. And Tracy, based out of Los Angeles, that's her realm, that's her world, and her daughter Sophie is a recipient of NK cells. And before I try to get too much into it, Tracy, just please give like a 101 intro on who you are and what you do, and a little background on yourself and Encore, and give us the story about Sophie.
You got it. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be with you today. Our journey has been a 13-year journey with our daughter, Soph, who's now 13 years old, a little over. She was diagnosed with a low-grade brain tumor, just 8.5 months old. And this tumor was called an optic pathway glioma. They call them optic pathways because the disease grows on the optic nerves. Visual loss is a big side effect of these tumors because the tumor actually strangles the optic nerves and starves the blood flow from the vision. And so my daughter, although she was supposed to be 100% blind within her first year of life, we have been able to maintain some of her vision over the years. It's really the brain surgeries, the many brain surgeries that she had when they resected disease and took out those optic fibers that cost her so much of her vision. But we've been doing holistic approaches with her since she was a baby, which I'll get more into in just a minute. And through these holistic approaches, and through the use of NK cell therapy, we've been able to get her to a much better place now than what she was when she was younger. These tumors, although they are traditionally survivable, there's an 85% recurrence rate for babies that are diagnosed. These tumors that are normally otherwise slow growing can be quite a bit more aggressive, and Sophie's definitely was on the aggressive side. She ended up failing 7 years of chemotherapy. She ended up failing 8 different protocols of very toxic treatments, and it was a horrible existence for a very long time. She's had actually almost 13 surgeries. Her 13th surgery is scheduled right now. She's had 6 surgeries on her brain, legally blind, left-hand side weakness. The child's had over 80 MRIs, and the amount of hospital stays are just unbelievable. So for us, it was really one of those situations where pretty much right away, we were just determined to find something better for her that could be more supportive of her care. And I'll never forget the first week of diagnosis. I'm not even sure that I changed my clothes, honestly. I sat there with my computer on my lap for days trying to figure out anything holistically that I could use as an adjunct to this therapy. Wasn't the web that literally led me down the path that I'm on now, though. It was social media, believe it or not. I had created a Facebook
Go
page
figure.
I know, right? I mean, you do have to be cautioned with social media, though. You can get a lot of really bad advice. There's a lot of keyboard doctors on social media. So you really have to make sure that if you decide to get that kind of information off Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you consume your social media, that you alternatively vet that information, which is what we did. We didn't just take this at face value. But wildly enough, I created a page for Sophie called Prayers for Sophie. And I was in a mommy group at the time. And these mothers saw that I had created this page, and I put it up at like midnight. I'll never forget. By the next morning, there was over 1,000 followers already on the page. This little page was going viral. I hadn't even put a post up yet. But I had this cute little chubby baby, so fat and sweet and gorgeous, and just the most delightful little thing. And these wonderful moms that had wrapped their arms around me and were guiding me and helping me. And we were all up all hours of the night breastfeeding and pumping or doing what have you. And would be 4 o'clock in the morning and we'd need a mommy tip because our baby wouldn't sleep. And there'd always be women there
Yeah.
available and ready to jump in and help. So it was this beautiful community. At 8.5 months old, my daughter's eyeball started to shake, and I didn't really understand what was going on. I was like, this is a little strange. What is this? So I went to my mommy group and I was like, hey, what do you guys think I should do? And everyone was like, there's probably nothing to worry about, but take her to the doctor. You can get it looked at. It's not normal for an eyeball to shake. So we did that.
Did they say like general physician doctor or like eye
Yeah, just take her to a baby
specialist?
doctor. Just take her to see her
Okay, okay,
pediatrician.
okay.
We weren't even
Gotcha.
thinking something's wrong with her brain at this point.
Yeah.
That never even kind of crossed our mind. We thought maybe it was something with, her vision, or I didn't know. I really didn't think that much about it. She was so, 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 so healthy and so perfect, and had not even had an ear infection at this point. And so we scheduled these doctor's appointments with her doctors. And Monday was a pediatrician. Tuesday was an ophthalmologist who was a new mom, by the way. She scheduled her to see a neurologist for the following day. And the neurologist was like, yeah, if there's anything going on here, it'd be so rare. It'd be like finding a needle in a haystack. I'm not worried about this. If it keeps shaking, we'll schedule something in a month or so and get an MRI done. But the new mom that was an ophthalmologist, something was going off. Her spidey senses were tingling. And I'm telling you, new moms,
Yeah.
when they have an
They
instinct,
know.
they should listen to it. They really should. They've even discovered that a baby's, like your child's cells, are found in the mother's brain and in her heart and other parts of their body. Actual cells still live on inside of the mother. It's wild. The kinds of connections that they're starting to show between parent and child. And I've always been somebody that listens to my intuition. I consider myself quite intuitive and really
Yeah.
really take note of those signs that I get when I get them. So for this mom to be like, this new mom, I call her the mom, she was an ophthalmologist, she was the eye doctor, for her to say, this is worrying me. I want to take this a little more seriously than what everybody else is. Let's just get an MRI. Let's just be safe. So there was a cancellation. And by that same Friday, our tiny little baby was in an MRI. And I was more concerned about the tube going down her throat for them to keep her airway open during anesthesia than I ever was that it could be anything more. And I was
Yeah.
terrified. I'll never forget. I was so scared of the anesthesia and of this her being intubated. I was losing it. And little did I know what my life was about to endure and how it was about to change. And that weekend, we ended up getting a phone call. Now, I'll never forget. Sophie was in this little plastic high chair seat that we'd put in the floor, and I was sitting on the floor with my legs crossed, feeding her some mashed up avocado because I was, one of those moms that even made her baby food. I did everything organic, made all the baby food, everything that touched that child's skin was, clean and perfect. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
consider myself having gone to baby college before I had her. I just did so much research and so much study. I just always wanted to be a mom, and I wanted to do it right. I wanted to get it right. I wanted to be prepared.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know what I mean? When I was feeding her, the phone rang, and I thought it was my sister and my brother-in-law because they were coming over. It was the day of the LA Marathon. We were about to go to this beautiful, super famous outdoor mall called the Grove. There's always bands in the park and a big lawn where you can have blankets available and you can lay blankets out. And there's beautiful outdoor shops and a fountain and a farmer's market. It's just the coolest outdoor area that we've been going to. I mean, I've been going there since the day I moved here over 25 years ago. And we loved going out there because it was a beautiful sunny day. And the phone rang and it was an unknown number. And I was like, what? Who's this? And I picked it up. And Sophie was with Kaiser at the time. She's now at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, but she was with Kaiser at the time. And Kaiser was always an unknown number when they called. And so it kind of freaked me out a little bit. I'm like, what's going on here? I picked up the phone and it was Sophie's pediatrician. And the first words out of his mouth were, Mr. and Mrs. Ryan, what I'm about to tell you is going to change your life forever. And I'm very sorry. And I stopped breathing, Chris. Like, just stop breathing right then and there.
Wow.
And he said, Miss Ryan, we found something on the MRI. There's a tumor in your daughter's brain. It's so rare, I had to Google it and I had to look it up. And it's called an optic pathway glioma. And the first words out of my mouth are, is my child going to die? And
Oh,
my whole body just seized up. I can feel pain in my body right now, just kind of reliving it. My shoulders, my neck, my back, like everything was just so tight, just waiting for this response. And he said, no, if you're going to get a brain tumor, this is the one you want. And I'm like, oh, well, great. the one you want. So
No
that's
kind. No, he wants any kind.
exactly. He said it has a very high survival rate. So it's slow growing. It's not one of the more aggressive kind. And I said, "What's the treatment for this?" And he said, "Chemotherapy." And it was just like that. Life as I knew it was done. It was over. It was never going to be the same.
And Sophie's held right now at this time?
8.5 months old.
8.5. Not even a year old.
Not even a year.
My God.
I was first time mom.
Let that sink in.
All I'd
Oh
ever
my.
wanted my whole life was to be a mom too. I even changed my career path so that I could be at home more. I was never going to be a stay-at-home mom. I've always been very driven in my career. I've always been very focused on doing things that I love and I'm passionate about, but also making money. I'm an entrepreneur. I love employing other people. I love mentoring other young people and giving them careers that they can grow into and
Right.
then thrive past. So I was never going to be a stay-at-home mom, but I worked in feature films when I first came out here. I did like the Spider-Man series and Mission Impossible and Fast and the Furious, and I was always on set. I was always traveling. I was going from one location to another and day shoot to night shoot, day shoot to night shoot. And I talked to so many of the members of the crew and the guys. I'll never forget all the conversations that I used to have with the key grips. And they'd be like, "Look, if you want to have a family, you want to actually know them. You might want to get out of this industry and do something
Yeah.
else." I
Yeah.
love my kids. They don't know my kids. I'm always on set. I'm always traveling. I'm always
It's a
transitioning.
busy time.
Yeah, it's a very, very busy type of career. And I moved out of film because of that. I had an incredible path that I could have taken and could have been very successful in feature films and decided that this isn't going to be for me. I need to do something else in order to be able to raise my child. So when this happened and they said chemotherapy, it just everything collapsed. I owned my own business at the time. We had a media agency. I'm a marketing executive by trade. We had a big agency, about 23 people here and another 50 people that we outsourced to between Mexico and New York. And we were very successful. We're busy, very busy all the time, working with companies like IBM, Samsung, Paramount Studios, doing huge campaigns for Fashion Week, working with global hair care brands, rock and roll legends, world renowned DJs, and the EDM scene, you name it. We were doing so many cool projects. And this happened. And I'll never forget that Monday after Sophie's diagnosis that weekend, we had to go to the cancer ward and meet with the oncologist there. And I walked in and it was one big open room where all the kids were. It's different now. HLA is a much larger hospital where you get more individual rooms, or at least they're separated by curtains. And it's just a more specialized hospital in general. But this is the insurance that we had at the time because none of us were sick. We were all super healthy. And
Yeah.
Kaiser's
You
all about
never expect it.
prevention. Yeah, it was perfect for us. But that first day in there, I literally could not stop crying. Like I just couldn't, like it couldn't stop the tears from streaming down my face. I've got this tiny little baby in my arms and I'm seeing these other children and their skin and bones, Chris. Their skin and bones, they're throwing up. There was one child in there that was a teenager and they looked like a skeleton. I can't imagine that poor child survived the treatment they were on because they literally looked like a skeleton. And I'm sitting there going, this is what they're about to do to my daughter. They're about to
Stuff.
take these toxic chemicals that I had to wear gloves just to change her diaper, or her
Right.
excrement could have burned my skin. Like as soon as she went to the potty in her diaper, we had to change it. And we had to wear gloves every time to protect our own skin from the toxic chemo that was processing through her body.
That's insane.
I mean, it was crazy, and she literally survived. Well, so let me back up a little before I go into the brain surgery she had. Because of this
Yeah.
Facebook page, very quickly we got connected to the former talk show host Ricky Lake, who, for my generation and your generation, was a household name in the movie Hairspray.
Afternoon,
Iconic
after,
character.
yeah, afternoon hour.
Exactly, exactly. Go Ricky, go Ricky. We call her Aunt Ricky now. But she found us through social media and she contacted us and we got put in touch with Abby Epstein, the director of the film. And I had a phone call with Abby, and Abby was telling me about this new documentary that they were filming using medical cannabis in children. Now, this was 13 years ago. This was before it was being talked about for epilepsy or being legalized
Had
across the
any
country.
recreational usage anywhere?
Well, we had medical in California, but no
Yeah.
recreational. 100% right. Medically, we could use it here, and medically, children could use it here, thankfully. But even with the state laws, they were still taking kids from their parents, even when they were doing everything right. And they were taking CPS was Child Protective Services was taking the children away from the homes, and the parents were having to fight legal battles in court. We've actually provided doctors before in the past when I worked more in cannabis than I did immunotherapy to help get these kids back to their parents, severely autistic children, children with horrific cancers, and cannabis was the only thing that was helping them. And they would still come and kidnap these children away from the homes because it was federally illegal. So thankfully that didn't ever happen to us. And thankfully we were surrounded by educators and by people who understood the plant far better than we did. We took this treatment to her doctors right away and we're like, look, this is who's bringing it to us. It didn't hurt that Ricky Lake was the name we dropped. They all knew who Ricky was, and they knew her to be a very well-respected woman in the field of children. She had the movie The Business of Being Born, which was a documentary that I watched. I actually tried for a natural birth with Sophie. I made it 23 hours without, no, 24 hours without any drugs. And finally, I started having double
Whoa.
contractions and double vision, and I couldn't stand anymore. And I finally had to call for the epidural. Little did I know my child was almost 10 pounds. They were like, oh, yeah, she's going to be about 8 pounds. She was 9 pounds, 7.4 ounces. So it took me almost 3 days to get her out. And I did finally tap out and ask for that epidural, but I'd been awake for 2 days and had 24 hours of active labor in that time because I went into labor right as I was going to sleep at like 2:00 in the morning the night. So I had not
My
been
God.
to bed. Yeah, it was brutal. Women are, let me tell you,
That's
women are
intense.
a lot stronger than we get credit for. A lot stronger. But yeah,
Absolutely.
so we ended up taking this treatment to Sophie's oncologist. They looked into it. They even had more research to bring to us when we came back about the use of it in brain cancer, where there was efficacy that was being shown. And they said, listen, we can't find anything that worries us about this. We're going to go ahead and give you the green light to do this alongside the chemotherapy, especially since it's an adjunct. And so because Sophie's tumor was slow growing, they allowed us a watch and wait period of 2.5 months because these tumors usually don't grow that fast. And in that time, that's when we started titrating our cannabis up.
Watch and wait.
Yeah, I mean, the weight was insane. But when you start with medical cannabis, you start very, very, very low, with a very low dose. And then over time, over a few days, you increase the dose. And a few days later, you increase the dose again. A few days later, you increase the dose again. And your body builds up a natural tolerance to it. So you don't feel that extreme psychoactivity. So we have worked children and adults to extraordinarily high doses so high that if you were to take it just outright, you'd be in the ER, like no question. But because the body has an adaptability to it, then you don't feel it. You might feel a little warm and fuzziness, but that's it. You don't feel uncomfortable at all. And so we were working Sophie up on her dose and her eyeball stopped shaking. And I thought for sure that the universe had come to save me and God had given me this magical plant and everything was going to be fine and we were going to avoid chemotherapy and Sophie was going to be, world renowned for getting rid of a brain tumor with cannabis alone. But unfortunately, the tumor had hit a growth spurt and it had grown more towards the back of her brain. So it relieved some of the pressure around off of the optic nerve. And the news that we got when that MRI came back was just absolutely devastating. Sadly, they called me over the phone to tell me what was going on. And they said, fortunately, this tumor's gotten substantially larger. We're going to have to conduct a craniotomy and we're going to have to do brain surgery and we're going to have to get a sample of this and we're going to have to make sure it's not a higher grade tumor. And I said, well, what if it is a higher grade tumor? And over the phone, Chris, no hesitation.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Over the phone?
Over the phone, they say, well, Miss Ryan, if it's a high grade tumor, your daughter won't live to see her second birthday. They said to me over the phone. I immediately got the worst case of vertigo I've ever had in my life because the muscles in my body seized up so fast that I dropped to my knees. My husband had just left to go to our agency and gone to work. I called him screaming. I was like, you've got to come home right now. They're scheduling a brain surgery for Sophie. They're saying this could be aggressive. If it is aggressive, she's not going to survive it. So we had to wait for this brain surgery. And we had already scheduled her first birthday party for the Sunday before her birthday that was on a Thursday. We had this cute little park that had like a little rec room and everything. And it wasn't available the day, 2 days after her birthday. Her birthday fell on it wasn't available a few days. Yeah, her birthday was on a Thursday and it wasn't available a few days after her birthday, but it was available before her birthday. So thankfully we had our birthday party scheduled. Ricky came, the film crew came, our friends and family came. And that Monday she had her brain surgery. And that Thursday, she celebrated her first birthday with her head in a bandage in the hospital, still recovering. So that is where our journey into chemotherapy began 2 weeks later. And that's all the time she had to recover from this resection that they did. And
That's insane.
they told us that there was 100% chance that she would be blind, completely blind, within 1 year from that date because of how much the nerves were already
A
being
hundred
strained.
percent chance. They were
100%
they were
chance.
that confident.
100% chance because these tumors don't traditionally respond very well to treatment. So they're here thinking, okay, well, this isn't going to shrink that much. The nerves are being so damaged right now because there's so much disease around them. There's no way that it's going to relieve the pressure. Well, with combination therapy of medical cannabis and vincristine and carboplatin chemotherapies, we shrank that tumor by almost 90% in the 13-month protocol. So we preserved her vision, and they couldn't believe it. They were like, "We've never seen anything like this. This thing is just melting away." And sadly, Kaiser had not treated but 3 cases of these. So even though her tumor was still shrinking on the last MRI, meaning that there was still activity in the disease because chemo only goes after dividing cells. That's why it doesn't work well in these low grade tumors because the cells don't divide that frequently, like a glioblastoma would, like a stage 4 very
Yeah.
aggressive cancer. So with that being said, they were shocked when they saw that the cannabis in combination with chemotherapy was actually working and it was still shrinking, meaning that there was still activity. The cells were dividing and still getting smaller. They stopped the protocol anyway. They followed the textbook. We even went to Children's Hospital LA and got a second opinion, and the doctor there was like, no, you should keep going with the treatment. Don't stop the treatment now. If it's still active, it can grow
Yeah.
back. Well, I'll be honest with you. We were naive. We were very naive. We're like, oh, but they said we can stop. So that means we can. That means they're right. And we don't want to put her on more chemo. And she's been in and out of the hospital so many times on this therapy. She'd had so many blood transfusions. She was so sick. This protocol was so toxic. She was so sick. I mean, my husband and I had to take turns sleeping. I'd go one night and he'd go the next because if we didn't rotate nights with her to stay up with her, we wouldn't sleep because she was in so much pain and discomfort and she was vomiting and the diarrhea that we would never rest if we didn't sleep one night off
Y-
each night.
Yeah,
Every other
if somebody wasn't awake at all times with her.
And if she slept during the day, we had to work. We had an agency we owned. We had a team that we were trying to run and a business that we were trying to grow on top of all this. So this went on for 7 years. The cannabis, we continued to use it. Sophie ended up getting seizures because of damage to her brain. She ended up having like 6 brain surgeries. And in this time, we continued to meet more and more people using cannabinoids. And we really became quite fascinated by the plant because of other things we were also seeing in our own daughter. For example, I mentioned she had to have a lot of blood transfusions when she was younger in that first protocol. Well, after 4 months of needing blood transfusions, she just stopped needing them. And that's not how the bone marrow works. You don't get to the point where you're so sick all the time, you need constant blood transfusions. And then one day you just don't need them anymore when you're continuing to get the toxic chemotherapy that's causing the need for the blood transfusions. But she just stopped needing them. Her marrow had repaired itself, or her body had become tolerant against this treatment. And the doctors were baffled. They were the ones that actually educated us on the fact. They were like, we don't understand this. We don't understand how she just stopped needing them. You don't see this. And we've confirmed that with many other medical professionals since. She also got to the point where her immune cells stopped plummeting on this very toxic drug. And the way her protocol would work is she would go in once a week for 4 weeks. The 5th week, she'd come back in to have her labs done to make sure her body was recovering. And she didn't need something like Neupogen. Neupogen was to help the red blood cells recover, her bone marrow recover because she was having so many blood transfusions, which she never ended up needing. And then you'd have 1 week off where you didn't have to do anything. So for 6 weeks, out of every 6 weeks, you got 1 week of no hospital visits. That's it. And that's only if your child wasn't having horrific side effects and was hospitalized from
Yeah,
those.
like you don't need to go in for extra fluids or labs or anything
Exactly.
else. And
Exactly.
yeah, okay.
I mean, IV infusion of saline because they're dehydrated, or I mean, it was
Yeah.
rare. We didn't spend a day, at least a day, if not more, every single week for 13 months in the hospital or at the hospital. But she stopped needing to do that because her white blood cells, her lymphocytes, stopped dropping. like all the other kids, they stop going into below normal ranges. And we're actually seeing that with natural killer cells. My company's immunotherapy, like for example, our glioblastoma patient right now, his ANCs have stopped dropping now that we're using the natural killer cells in combination. Well, what we ended up proving with cannabis in 27 human beings whose blood we tested at UCLA and then reverse engineered those findings into humanized mice, we found that cannabis was rebooting the natural killer cells. It was boosting immune function. It was helping to repair your number one defense against cancer, your NK cells. Your natural killer cells are the generals in the marching army of your immune system. When they fail, that's your first step in getting cancer. So anybody who's had cancer, they have malfunctioned natural killer cells. Natural killer cells have the unique ability to see cancer cells where other white blood cells don't. T cells can't see a cancer cell because it doesn't have a surface receptor called MHC class 1. I call it the white flag on the surface of the cell. NK cells don't need that white flag. They can just see them. Well, it's the generals and the marching army, and it's easier to learn when you can like create a normal visual in your mind.
Yeah,
It's the science is very
exactly. I'm very big on that.
yeah, absolutely. You want people to become educated and become more well-rounded when it comes to their own health. But natural killer cells are the one things in hospitals they don't check, but yet is your number one defense against disease. They're the leaders. They're the ones that are tasked with identifying the enemy, recruiting the soldiers, and killing the disease. They actually fire these little granules at the cancer cells and explode them, the stem cells, and explode them. So we discovered that cannabinoids have the ability to both see these cells, but also see and kill cancer stem cells that chemo and radiation can't see, and from which recurrence comes. So you can be cancer free on a scan, but there can be these cancer stem cells lurking about that don't take up the contrast, that don't light up on imaging. And you don't know that they're there until they start to mutate and grow and you have a recurrent, right? So that's why your immune system and keeping it strong and healthy is so important. So important for Soph.
Extremely important.
Absolutely. So we knew that we were on to something unique with this plant. We had just had too many doctors too many times now say, we can't explain what we're seeing. This doesn't make any scientific sense. We ended up creating a company called CannaKids and SavingSophie.org, which is our charity that we were using to raise money and to educate families at the same time because medical cannabis is not cheap at all, especially in those days. It was way more expensive than it is now because it was so hard to get and to process, and the way we manufactured it. We triple lab tested everything. Lab testing wasn't even required because we knew we were putting this into children and into sick patients. And there was no world where I was going to put anything into anybody else if I wasn't comfortable putting it into my own child. And there was no way I was putting anything into my own child unless it was lab tested. And I knew there were no microbes or molds or pesticides or anything toxic that could hurt her. And you wouldn't believe some of the stuff I found in cannabis. I have found fecal matter in cannabis oil before that was sold to a child for their cancer
Well, oh my
because
God,
people that
that's
were handling
insane.
medicine went to the bathroom, they didn't wash their hands, and they transferred the bacteria into the cannabis. Literally tested positive for fecal matter. So that's why you have to be
Another
very
reason why hygiene is so important.
yeah,
Oh my God,
yes, absolutely. I mean,
that's
you just don't even
wild.
know transfer. I know it was crazy. So throughout this process of building CannaKids, we worked to create this formulation, this line, this cannabis oil line with all these very specific formulations for cancer, autism, and epilepsy. Those were our big three in children. We ended up having just as many adult patients because the adults were like, "Hey, if this is working for the kiddos, why wouldn't it work for me? I'm just a little bit older," and it did. It worked beautifully for them as well. We ended up becoming known all over the world for this company and for our advocacy work. I've been going to Washington, D.C. for 10 years now. I was meeting with members of Congress, going to political events around town. I still go to many of them. I've now since been to the White House 5 times during Biden's administration. I've been an invited guest. It wasn't going and doing the lab tours. I mean, or sorry, the VIP tours. I didn't pay to go there. I actually was invited to come
No,
and
no,
have the tours and
yeah,
be,
they're asking you to come.
they asked me to come. I got literal emails from the White House saying, we would like to invite you as our guest, which was, I'm telling you, a very, very cool moment for me. Very cool. I got to attend multiple of the pediatric moonshot consortiums there as an invited guest and as an expert in the industry. And I got to have an audience with Biden. His son died of brain cancer. And so there was this really special moment that we shared because it was like a mom talking to a dad kind of thing.
Yeah.
This is what my daughter's gone through. I know what you've gone through, and here's what I'm trying to do to make sure we don't have to go through Nobody has to go through stuff like what we've had to go through before. So I've always been very involved in advocacy, moving the needle, trying to make a difference and helping people find better treatments. I mean, the fact that we are this many years into existence and we have this many advancements, we have dancing robots that can literally move just like a human and can come into our homes and do our chores and clean for us and give us any kind of information we want in the world. But cancer therapies are barely evolving, especially in kids, especially in children.
It's
When
insane.
treated, her
It's
therapies had
insane.
not been in 40 years. 40. So to end up in a situation where I've got this precious little baby and they're using something for her that they used 4 decades ago before cell phones were even invented, in my mind, was an absolute, complete, and total atrocity. I just wasn't going to stand for it. So, Canna Kids was such a passion project. It was so special to myself and to my husband and to my daughter. And we started speaking on stages all over the world. I ended up doing about 60 speaking engagements a year on average, advocating for this plant, sharing the patient stories, sharing how to use it effectively, sharing access to medical professionals so they get patients could get guided care. Because if you take it wrong, like I said, it can make you very uncomfortable. And you also need to
Yeah.
understand how to take it with other drugs. For example, morphine or Oxycontin. You don't want to take cannabis next to those because it will make them more potent. It will potentiate the effects of those drugs. And so there has to be spacing
Right.
that's done. Chemotherapies, you want to space them by several hours or half a day. Immunotherapies, there are immunotherapies you shouldn't use cannabis with. And making sure that you're not being counterintuitive in the use of the plant is important. Sophie became one of the more well-known children around the world, especially because of the Netflix documentary. National Geographic did a documentary on us. We had other smaller documentaries that were shot. We were on national television shows, the TV show The Doctors. We were on Fox and CNN and the Today Show, or clips from our documentary. I mean, PBS, you name it. We were everywhere with this plant. But for some reason, my daughter's tumor relentlessly kept growing. And that's when I looked to Israel. Dr. Dedi Miri is one of the scientists that was in our documentary, world-renowned cannabis scientist that focuses on cancer, autism, and epilepsy as well. And I really wanted him to try and help me figure out why were these strains not working in so. And as a long story short, what we discovered was it wasn't the cannabis that was the issue. It was that my daughter had no natural killer cells in her brain for the cannabis to activate. And the T cells could only do so much because he couldn't see the cancer like NK cells would, and there were no NK cells to activate. Yet from the neck down, her natural killer cell function was that of a healthy person. And that's where my business partner in InCourt came into play, Dr. Anahit Jewett from UCLA. She's the one that discovered this when Israel was unable to help me advance science for my daughter. We advanced science for all kinds of other children and patients, which was very exciting, but it wasn't helping Soph. And when I found Anna and Dr. Jewett she was able to help me figure this out, that's when I exited the project in Israel. I sold my shares in it and I started focusing right here in my own backyard at UCLA, where this treatment came from. And
And
that's
how
when,
old is Sophie at the time?
at this point, it's 2018. So she was 5 years old, five and a half,
Okay.
probably almost 6 years old. It was I think it was in like February or March of 2018 when I met Dr. Jewett, and Sophie was born in 2012, in October of 2012. So when I started looking at her science and I started looking at all of her animal data and I started seeing all of these models, these cancers, breast, liver, lung, oral, colorectal, lymphomas, leukemias, pancreatic. And in these mice, she's reversing the disease. And these mice are as close to a human model as you can get. Like their immune systems are almost identical. They're pumping human blood. And we're seeing this reversal of disease in these mice. I'm like, I need to be a part of this. It just felt like the universe had guided me to her. There was a lot of really weird
Yeah.
random chains of events that led me to her. So that's when she and I decided to partner. That's when she did the study on the 27 patients and then made those discoveries in cannabis that she called some of the most profound discoveries to have been made. And I ended up being a patent holder on that patent with her as a co-inventor. I provided all the patients, I provided the dosing protocol, I provided the medicine, and she tracked the blood at UCLA, and then she did the animal work. Because we now knew that this cell type that is so critical to Sophie's survival and health was missing, that's when we said, okay, our worlds are colliding here. Let's do this together. Let's figure out how we can commercialize what you have. What I have isn't working for my child.
Yeah.
What you have could. And my daughter's always been patient number one for me. no matter what, I was always going to be focused on trying to save her life. But I wanted by doing so to help everyone else standing behind her. I love helping people. It is like a drug for me.
100%.
I mean, watching people get well when they're so sick and to know you've had a hand in it, there is nothing. I've had wild careers. I used to run the largest nightclub in the country and throw the biggest spring break parties in the US. I used to fly airplanes. I worked on some of the biggest movie franchises in the world. I've had some really cool jobs, really cool. Nothing compares. Nothing compares to getting a phone call or seeing a scan from a patient and their cancer's going away and they should be dying. They should not be surviving this disease.
There's nothing else like it.
I mean, it
That's
just isn't.
incredible.
It's a
Yeah.
drug. That's my drug. So we now, all these years later, unfortunately, and very sadly, Dr. Jua passed away last year from a really nasty chronic disease that she wasn't able to beat, which was horrific for me. It was like losing a second mom. She saved my child from, they wanted to put my kid back on chemo at one point because the tumor started acting up again. And we were able to avoid it. And we've been able to avoid it. And now she's healthy. She's doing fantastic. She does have gut issues that we're battling because of all the years of chemotherapy, and it's a nightmare. But her brain tumor right now, we believe from what we're seeing, is crumbling from these therapies that we now have that we are using in patients through palliative care in another country. We're taking that data, that safety data, and we're using it for our FDA application that we're hoping to submit this year. We got to close some more funding. The environment out there is just, it's treacherous right now. So if
Yeah.
there's any investors out there, call me. But we've treated 9
Please do.
patients. I know, right? And we've given 23 infusions with 0 adverse events. We haven't had a single patient have a situation where they felt worse or had any kind of side effect from the treatment. They've had side effects, but they've been good. They felt better. Their brain fog went
Yeah.
away. They could through the night. Their pain
Positive
resolved.
side effects, which
All positive.
most people don't hear about. They're always hearing about the negative side effects. Nobody ever hears about the positive side effects.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
incredible.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what got us to this point in time today was this incredible roller coaster of ups and downs and highs and lows and cut poison burn, brain surgeries, body surgeries, eye surgeries, chemotherapies, clinical
Yeah.
trials, trial and error, just trying to find something that's going to work.
What I've always tried to tell everybody is you don't know what you need to know until you need to know it. And until that moment actually happens. And I guess it's a simile for what life is all about. But your daughter's now 13. Is that correct? And I would say thriving. I'm such a positive soul. Everything's looking from what you've been explaining and telling me that the path that y'all have taken is the path that has been meant to be. There's very few people that I connect with or talk to that expand upon K cells and cannabinoids and cannabis treatment in combination in oncology. I mean, there's always going to be some stigma around it, but at the same time, it's out there. This is 2026. Like, information is everywhere. If you don't talk about it, how else is anybody going to know? Like, there's stimuli coming from every direction. But
Exactly.
when you're talking about your child's life, your purpose for existing is literally to help and provide and to be their parent. I mean, God is just so powerful. Meeting you in San Diego last month, I felt like that entire week I was on this like mission of connecting with like all these moms on a mission, and you were one of many. You know what I mean? And so wow, it's so intense to hear you talk about Sophie's story and how much she's been through in 13 years. And it's just so powerful. I mean, God bless you.
Thank you. I wish that we didn't have to go through what we had to go through to get to where we are, but I believe that we're all here for very specific reasons. It's a matter of being aware and awake to it. I really believe this is why I was given breath and that we signed up for this. There's been so many things along the way that have been these just miraculous coincidences, which I don't believe in coincidences. I think everything happens exactly how it's supposed to simply because it did. If I was supposed to endure anything else in my life was supposed to be easy breezy and chill and everything was supposed to be handed to me in a silver platter. It would have been. It's been the opposite of
Right.
that. Nothing has been handed to me ever on a silver platter. I did
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
childhood with, but for an extended amount of time, but even that was riddled with some trauma. So, you know, I just, I'm making the most out of this life I've been given. I really tried to accept what my path is, and I've tried to walk that path to the very best of my ability with as much grace and dignity as I could. But I've had to crawl on my belly, elbow style, like in the army.
100%. Yeah. You've been in the trenches. Still in the trenches.
I'm not, it's not over. We're not done. I mean, she still has to have a horrible surgery on her leg where they have to break her ankle bones and fuse her foot straight. She's in the wheelchair all day at school because her foot drags so bad from this cyst that grew in the motor cortex. Her left arm doesn't work. I mean, her vision still comes and goes. There's cures for that coming, so we're optimistic that we'll get that fixed. We're still not out of the woods. The tumor's still in there. We're still trying to kill it. And I'm hopeful. I'm now more hopeful than I've ever been. She hasn't been on chemo since 2019. We're 7 years now
Yeah.
with toxic treatment, which I have to give kudos to us because I really don't know if she would be off therapy right now as relentless as this tumor is. And I don't know if she would have survived a whole lot more, to be honest. She was almost out of options. They were about to start recycling old chemos for her.
It drives me nuts. It's wild to think that in today's time that's what is suggested in terms of treatment for any patient of any age, like chemotherapy. Like, really? Like, seriously? Like, that'd be standard of care. It blows my mind. It's all backwards. You know what I'm saying? To me, chemo is a band-aid, and if you need it for a short period of time to help reduce some of the tumor burden, so you can get to the next therapy that you need to get to, or trial, or whatever it is, then use it. But as an end game, like, this 60-year-old treatment or therapy. So
I know.
I really want to dig more into NK cells, about what they are, how they work, what your company is doing, your organization, what y'all need to get to the next point. I know you have a sharp stop time here in just a couple of minutes, so having to cut this short, which is why we'll have to have a part 2. But yeah, I really want to dig a lot more into NK cells
Well,
and
for those who
everything
don't want
that
to wait
NCORE
for
is
part 2,
doing.
they can go to our website to learn more about it today at www.ncore.com. It's NK for natural killer cells, ORE.com, NKORE.com. There's a documentary teaser trailer on the homepage of our website down at the bottom, which is our new documentary that we're filming that gives you a really great inside look at who we are, what we do. It explains natural killer cells. There's another video with Dr. Neil Paulus on the website as well that explains NK cells and how they work and how they're these generals in the marching army of our immune systems and the role that they play in identifying cells that aren't supposed to be in our body and protecting us from cancer and many other immune related diseases, in fact. So there's a wealth of information there. You can contact me through the website at any time just by submitting a contact us form that comes directly to me. You can also find me on LinkedIn, really easy to find under Tracy Ryan. And then on Instagram, Tracy Ryan _NCORE. And then if you want to follow my daughter's incredible journey, it's Prayers for Sophie, SOPHIE on Instagram and Facebook.
And as I add the playlist on my webpage, I'll add all those links onto that within the description, as long as the hyperlink as well. So to help everybody out to be able to go directly to that. Tracy, thank you again. I know you're extremely busy, but I'm so appreciative of you and what you're doing, and God bless you. And I'll have to get on your calendar again and continue this conversation.
I'd love to. Well, we can maybe even do it next week. So let's get it going. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
It's really a pleasure.
Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely. Everybody out there, sending love. Peace. All right, that concludes today's episode of TIL Talks with Chris White, as we talk TILs, tumor-infiltrating lymphocytes, and all advanced cell and gene therapies. As a reminder, I am not a medical professional or medical expert. I am only a professional and expert on my story and my experience. If you are needing or seeking medical advice or assistance, please reach out to your care team. I'd like to thank my guest today for joining me on TIL Talks. For our listeners who have not yet done so already, please follow, comment, subscribe, share, and smash that like button. For more information about TIL Talks and related resources, please visit www TILTalks.com. I'm Chris White. As always, sending love to everybody. Peace.